Cheers, gentlemen.
Yeah, there we go.
To our first $1 million. Hello, welcome to our first podcast. We'll be the unknown film enthusiasts.
Are we going to change our name or
We're
not?
working on branding. My name is Zach. Nice to meet everybody.
I'm Nick.
And Dan.
Good job. You remembered everyone's name. We did it. All right.
I knew my name.
So, today we're going to be discussing the movie Mother. We went out and we saw it literally only a couple hours ago, and we kind of have a lot of thoughts and feelings about it.
Packed theater.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so let's actually set the stage for that. So, we went at 1:10 was our movie showing in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah.
So, obviously, there's at least 8 people in the movie theater. And we go in, it's completely empty, and I have to say, the first
You're
thing...
leaving out the part when we had trouble finding seating.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't because it was packed.
Yeah, that's true. We were in the very back of the theater, right? And we were like, oh, what a nice big screen.
And then we realized the screen was missing a part, so we moved all the way down.
That's true. And we got nice and close, so we got the true movie theater experience.
And then the beautiful showing began.
Oh, yes. And my favorite thing was, you see, Javier Bardem of Pirates of the Caribbean 5 fame.
No other movie,
No
to his
other
credit.
movies.
No Oscars.
And the thing we hear from behind us is, oh, I love him. We were in for a good movie, I think. So I thought, talking about the cast of this movie, right? We have Jennifer Lawrence, Javier Bardem, the two primary characters. Can't remember the rest of the names of everyone else in there.
There is Brendan Gleeson,
Okay.
Domhnall Gleeson, both brothers playing brothers.
Very good.
Michelle Pfeiffer as woman, and Ed Harris as man. There are multiple other characters that pop up, but we'll get into those later as they show up, most of them being relatively unnamed and without lines.
Yes, intentionally vague.
Do not sit on that sink, it is not braced.
Intentional vagueness of this movie, I think, is what's causing a lot of... I wouldn't call it hate, but uncertainty.
Controversy. Uncertainty.
Uncertainty.
Exactly. Absolutely.
It is certainly a polarizing film, and I believe the marketing for it was guided in a specific direction that I don't think the movie could pay off.
Yeah.
It had,
For sure.
It paid homage to such movies as Suspiria and other things where it's dead set on a horror movie, where this ended up being more of a romantic drama with a lot of not so subtle references to certain books.
Very, very much so. Going off on how it was a horror movie is what the trailers tried to set up, which was a little deceiving going into it, and then realizing, it's this very symbolic movie with a lot of religious aspects to it.
And let's hit on that as well. This movie was definitely marketed as a horror. I talked to my parents about it. They're like, oh, that seems like a really scary movie. I actually talked to somebody at my work about it as well, and they're like, oh, isn't that the movie that got an F on Cinema? Well, I can't remember the name of that.
Cinema Score.
Cinema
It's
Score.
very rare. It's mostly movies that have the same sort of branding.
So it gauges the expectation of the film versus what it really is.
Yes.
Right? And that's what really drives a
It
lot
takes
of that.
people walking out of the theaters and getting their initial reactions based on what they thought they were going to see and what they ended up seeing. Most of the time, that generally falls in line. If you're going to go see Transformers, you're going to get Transformers.
Yeah.
If you're going to go see Mother, you are not going to get
That's not
Hunger
gonna be
Games
the same.
5.
Yeah.
And so, the big difference there is you go in expecting a horror, and what you get, a metaphorical religious film, I would say, is maybe the best way to phrase that.
Absolutely.
It plays on those religious themes heavily. I think so, right? But that's not the marketing for it.
The marketing of the movie is more this thriller that you're supposed to be engrossed in Jennifer Lawrence's character and trying to figure out why she's in this situation, why everything is happening around her. But instead you get this very blocky, not very narrative-focused, more just events that will affect her, but not really... You don't feel as if the character is really choosing anything that's happening. It's more just stuff happens around her.
Yeah.
And it's, for most of the film, she's kept without a voice. No one will listen to anything she says. Anything she says is dismissed. And she's, despite being the protagonist of the movie, isn't left in charge of her own life.
And that's a very interesting experience to kind of watch a character like that, or try to feel for a character like that, because it's not normal with types of movies where there is a character that you do identify with. You feel a part of them within yourself. Whereas with this, she was the ultimate mother, we'll say, where she was so giving, was always looking out for everyone else throughout the movie. Like, it was rough for her.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
I also want to just read off the IMDb page here. The tagline for Mother is, a couple's relationship is tested when uninvited guests arrive at their home, disrupting their tranquil existence. Okay, it makes sense there, but it only makes sense in the ending effect, because when you go in, you definitely get the idea of, oh, this is a woman trapped in an unhealthy marriage or something like that. And, I mean, at first, too, there's a scene where she has this connection with the house. You see it kind of go through the walls, and you see, like, a pulsating heart.
Yes.
First, I thought this was a Monster House situation.
Ah, yes. Classic Monster House.
Yeah. But the idea of the house as a character
And that's-
acting upon it, but it kind of was like that, but not really.
I agree with you. It's especially when she had first put her hand on the wall and we saw that heart beating like almost within the wall. But the second time she did that, she became a part of it. Something affected her, and that heart was no longer beating healthily.
In the second time, I guess we see the heart sequence, and that's the best way to phrase that for the vision that she has. But the first time the heart, as you can tell, beautiful red, purple, healthy. And then the second scene, which Dan is talking about, is you begin to see this disease blackness kind of creep into it. And then at that point is when you see Jennifer Lawrence's character. She starts convulsing, and she always has to go to the sink to get this like magical liquid, or it's some gold drink.
I had very trouble understanding that.
Yeah.
That part was one of the parts of the movie that left me very lost. I mean, a lot of the movie left me, thinking and trying to piece together what message is trying to convey.
Yeah.
She would have those random episodes that was very much so out of her control, like the rest of the events going on around her. And that liquid was some sort of medicine, is my guess, to heal her.
So, and let's also just make it clear here that we sound like we're talking very vague about this film. We haven't really said, oh, this is specifically what happens, or but it's intentionally done in that way. So, but this is a movie that you should experience it, because it is important, and the message, if you can kind of get a message out of it, is one of treating others with care, and specifically in this case, it's treating Mother, which is signifying this idea of, I think, Mother Nature. That's that's what we're getting at.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, it seems as though it's trying its hardest to alienate the audience as much as possible.
Yeah.
There's never a point where you're watching this, and, well, maybe there is for some viewers. I personally enjoyed the movie. But I know specifically for other people, they see a scene that's overtly violent, and instead of taking it for the message it's trying to convey, they'll only take it as, well, that was violent, I don't like violence. It could easily go over someone's head, which I feel like the director, hopefully getting a intelligent audience to go in, not that anyone who doesn't like the movie isn't intelligent, it's more just, you're not just going to get all the answers. No. Likely, you'll walk out of the movie trying to piece together everything, as opposed to saying, I like how these pieces fit together in the story. You'll think, what is the story, because I have all of these pieces. So,
and that brings up a good point, though, right? Because if we were going by trailers alone, the audience that these trailers are trying to attract are I'm going to go in to get a good scare.
And that's just the thing, is going back before when I said the trailers were a little bit deceiving, maybe that wasn't the right word at the time, but those trailers were trying to attract a very broad audience to try and bring in more people, which I can understand. At the same time, you want them to enjoy it, or at least draw something from it, and take something to think about. Going back before to all the religious stuff, talking about, that is one of like the major themes throughout it. So let's talk about the characters.
Yeah, yes, definitely.
Mother Nature, we're saying.
Yes. So Jennifer Lawrence definitely portrays this idea of Mother Nature, and that's maybe the best way, or the planet. I mean, that's kind of the thing here.
She is Mother Nature. The home represents Earth and everything that people can take from her, and the resources that are bountiful at the time. She works throughout the movie to repair everything that goes wrong. She's setting this up so that way her and Javier Bardem's character, who we can likely safely say is God.
Yes, he's definitely
or
God.
At least a creator.
Yes.
She's set up in this way where she's trying to make everything better, no matter how hard everything else is trying to work against her.
And you kind of play into that, right? The first thing that she tells us, the audience, is basically, the house burnt down, and I've been working with my husband, Javier Bardem's character, we've been working to repair it and build it, and it's a little broken right now, but we can still fix it if no one comes in and screws it up for us. But they also live, as a consequence of that, an isolated life. And I think that isolation kind of comes into a more controversial thing about this movie, is that if you understand it as a religious metaphor, I think it makes Javier Bardem, who plays God, seem very egotistical.
Absolutely, and that is where I see him relating very much to the people in that movie who were take. You know, I'm going to use these resources, and that was interesting for me because it's like he's representing God, but he's almost also representing these people, like who he has created in this film by attracting them to himself in such a way where they are going to come to their home, and they are going to take their food and, you know, resources and whatnot.
And that creation aspect, it's not on the nose that he's like, oh, I'm going to go out and come back with these people. It's these people appear out of nowhere. You can tell that he's longing for attention that he's not getting from Mother Earth, and then conveniently at the door, you have a person looking for a place to stay. It's not on the nose about these religious themes at first. It sets itself up as a horror movie. Ooh, there's a stranger in the house. How's that going to affect it? And it plays out in the same way. Someone does die, but it's not because of the vengeful stranger.
And you have to ask yourself, though, then, too, could the film have done it better if they did not include that for that audience that needed that very horrific thing to say, oh, this film succeeded because this person died, it was gruesome at this point, like...
I feel like it set up the normal horror checkboxes, but chose to work its way around them as much as possible. The characters are fleshed out in a way where it's just like a home invasion movie where you grow to understand where everyone is lying and where they fall into place with each other. But as more and more characters appear and as more of the movie plays out, you realize that, okay, well, these aren't necessarily people I can relate to because they have more of a impression on the world as a whole than anyone else. People are just working off of their own egos, and it ends up being something completely different. It sets itself up in a way, both through trailers and even the beginning of the movie, vague, where in a normal horror movie you would get the explanation as the movie goes on. This just continues to add on more vague substance for you to then piece together in your own interpretation, which is a good and a bad thing, because it gives those who wanted to go in and think and try to gain something from the movie other than, here are the check boxes, I'm going to check them out, and the movie's over and I'm pleased with the experience, and those who wanted to go in and just, they see completely unfiltered director's vision of what he has to say about something, and whether that's going to make you happy, I don't know if he necessarily cares. I think he just wanted to get his vision out there, and the only way to get a studio to market it was to brand it as this. You'll get enough people in with these big-name actors, with this big-name director, and hopefully everyone will show up and get at least the minimum of what they expected, so they're not disappointed. But obviously the box office receipts do not convey that.
Yeah. So let's do two things right now. So the production budget for Mother is $30 million, and at the time of this recording, we have an estimate on Box Office Mojo of $11 million. That is a third of their money, and this is also coming after It.
It checks all the boxes. Where it's a throwback movie to the 80s movies that you like. It has all these characters. It has a familiar story where even if you go in not reading it, you're aware that there is this clown. Whether it focuses on the clown completely, it really doesn't.
No.
It does something different. So it leaves audiences pleased, and they walk out saying, well, that wasn't what I expected, but it worked.
Yeah.
Whereas...
But then also
with Mother, you walk in and God knows what you expected.
Mother tied their advertising to It as well, because there was that pre-roll ad of like, oh, if you're ready for It, go and see Mother next weekend.
Buy your tickets right after you walk out.
Yeah, when you walk out.
It was marketed as the companion piece to It. It is a relatively straightforward horror movie, has everything you would expect. There's this weird art piece that follows it.
So let's say this too, right? So it's philosophical horror. That's what Wikipedia is telling me. And let's go through...
Trusted resource.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Trusted resource. Always get there. But philosophical horror. With that, philosophical tagline makes sense. But let's go through the plot here. So let's section it off where, opening... like, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and how we want to divvy that out. So you open up... The first scene you see is of Jennifer Lawrence's face on fire, right?
I don't believe it's Jennifer Lawrence's face because that ties into the end of the movie. But you see a woman's face being burned. You see ashes, and then all of a sudden you see the ashes start to clear as a house starts to form. And the very last thing you see is Javier Bardem placing this weird glass crystal with some veins of fire in it into a case.
So the opening act, then, we come to understand that, at this point at least, we're not piecing it together. We're not seeing the symbolism that the movie is. We're not seeing any metaphors. We just see a couple living together. She's fixing up the house, she's preparing the meals, she's working, and he is in his office, in his study.
Failing to write. He's a struggling author. And
he needs this sort of creative outlet. The house seems to be the mother's outlet, and she's working for everyone.
We see Jennifer Lawrence paying attention to the house, and then that's where we have that first connection with the house, and they're rebuilding. And then you get the kind of mysterious knock at the door. I came up here to do some work, and I thought this was a bed and breakfast.
He's somewhat needy, he's presumptuous, but you see this weird relationship where him and the man, Jennifer Lawrence's husband, have some form of
having a grand old
friendship.
time.
Yeah,
they're bonding.
Drinking, they're
together.
doing other stuff.
They have what seems to be a really
good
great
time.
Night.
Absolutely.
And later on in the night,
she wakes up. She walks back downstairs to the bathroom where the old man who showed up at the door is getting sick, and she's not happy about it. Yeah. There is a reveal.
Well, we see an injury on his back.
We see an injury on his back.
Yes. Located near the bottom of his rib cage.
Yes.
Here's where this is up to interpretation, but it seems as though they're trying to portray this as the character of Adam from the Bible, and his rib has just been taken by the man, Javier Bardem, to possibly create more.
Because lo and behold, within the next couple minutes, another stranger appears, and this time it's a woman. Yes, the Catwoman.
The stunning fox of every hit 2014 song, Michelle Pfeiffer.
So she comes up and just says, "Oh, hello."
I believe she just opens the door and acts as if she's meant to be there.
Oh,
Ed Harris walks out, and they immediately start making out.
So they have them come in, and immediately they assume the role as, we are respected house guests. We also, we have a son that we call. They have a son, apparently, again, out of nowhere.
Jumping ahead real quick, when there's the confrontation with Jennifer Lawrence's character or the doctor's wife, and she's telling them, you got to get out. Even the body language, I think the acting was very good in the sense where Michelle Pfeiffer's character, she was holding her fingers down by her waist, just had her shoulders together. It was a childlike apology where she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then kind of just walked off, and they did not end up leaving the house.
She's very dismissive of it, and at the same time is extraordinarily entitled and feels that they have been welcomed into this home. She goes in rooms she's asked not to. She asks questions she shouldn't ask, going into why doesn't mother have a child?
Yes.
Is it because you don't want to? Is it because he doesn't love you? And then that's what starts the seed, I believe, in Jennifer Lawrence's mind, that maybe this guy has more interest in what others think of him than her.
And it also speaks to the character that Jennifer Lawrence is playing. You can tell she's uncomfortable. She does not like what's going on. And she speaks out here and there.
That was a lot of the movie.
It's the entire movie.
The entire movie.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is she is a passive character. She should be treated correctly and everything, and you get that feeling. You do feel a little sympathy, I would say, with her as well, because
definitely.
Why aren't you listening to her? She makes sense. Like, this is weird. Why are you not acknowledging that this is weird and wrong? And it's because he's like, well, I get the attention. I finally have attention. It's like, it puts Jennifer Lawrence in a case where you do feel that sympathy for her, because it sucks for her.
Nothing is ever good enough.
Oh, yes.
Is a theme that shows up over and over and over throughout the movie.
And let's think about that. That ties into the many times throughout the film that these two characters came up to each other and they were like, "Oh, like, I love you, I miss you," and then parted ways again. That had to have happened probably 10, 12, maybe even 20 times throughout the film. They were showing that sort of love for each other, but it didn't matter due to the circumstances of the situations that were happening around the house. There was complete and utter disaster, and we saw it get bad once, and I can say I thought that was as bad it was going to get, but then twice as many people came, and next thing you know, it was everyone.
We got to go through Adam and Eve, or going through the house. So the doctor and the doctor's wife.
Okay.
So at this time, right, and we have 4 people in the house. We have Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem, and we have the doctor and the doctor's wife.
At this point, we see Javier Bardem's prized possession, which is his crystallized piece, and Jennifer Lawrence asks that Michelle Pfeiffer just don't go near it. It's his prized possession. If anything were to happen to it, he'd be absolutely beside himself with rage, and it is the last remnants of the house that burned down before. Within 10 minutes, the two fools wander back upstairs, start messing around with it, and eventually knock the crystal over. And we can see here that the crystal more than likely represents the apple.
Yes.
In
Garden of Eden.
Yes.
So yeah, and that's
Mr.
also
Altar Boy.
Yes, exactly. Oh, yeah. My large experience in the Catholic Church, but this idea of the Javier's character, his study was his precious room. You can go anywhere in this house except for this one room. Mm-hmm. You can eat any fruit of the garden except this one tree. The doctor's wife goes in and with Adam as well. Mm-hmm. You hear a crash, and you see this crystal on the ground in pieces. Mm-hmm. It's a signal to not only Javier Bardem but also Jennifer Lawrence's character as well.
Absolutely.
Where it's like, okay, they need to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
You can no longer come to this place.
Which was
his study.
Javier Bardem locking it off, blocking it off, knocking the doornail, boarding it up.
Yep.
He boarded up his study.
No longer can humans, if we're coming from the biblical sense, enter into paradise. Then, once that this has all happened and he's gone through heart wreck and all this stuff because of this crashed crystal, well, Jennifer Lawrence is doing everything she can to get the doctor and the doctor's wife out of there, and then someone appears at the door. I don't know if that technically goes into the second act, but you see, eventually the son finds his house, and then someone appears at the door. That just happens to be their son.
The doctor and doctor's wife, mind you, immediately went from breaking this man's heart and his crystal to vigorously having sex in the guest room.
Yes.
Then leads into the son character, not so subtle, sex than a kid.
Yeah. Whoops, we messed up. We're sorry. You run off. Let's fuck. Let's fornicate. But that's exactly what it is. Time to
procreate and make more, which is very interesting. We don't see...
Yeah.
We don't see other people until
the son appears.
Yeah.
And then the son appears, and that's where we get to this point of he's very concerned that his younger brother, which we also just found out exists, pops into existence and says, he just found out of the will, and that leads to a squabble.
To say the least.
To say the least. You also see, too, Javier Bardem's character intervene and being like, calm down, it'll be okay, we'll talk it through. And obviously they respond with that, no, I'm going to freaking beat the ever-living shit out of this guy.
Which is very funny at this point in the film. Not funny, but very interesting to watch, because it's not, like you said before, Nick, it's not normal to see these events unfold as they do. Whereas you have strangers just fighting in your home who have just shown up and made themselves at home. They have entered through your doorway and are already at each other's throats.
Yeah. Jennifer Lawrence was screaming at these people, just stop, just stop, just stop. That leads to physical blows and eventually leads to the older brother's death. And we also have then the symbolism and connection to the story of Cain and Abel from the Bible. Mm-hmm. That is the introduction of sin. You have what leads to a funeral. And this funeral involves Javier Bardem saying, hey, you know what? let them, because they're going through a difficult time, I'm going to let all their family and friends come over to our house.
And we're going to have a little party, have toast. And...
Let them mourn, let them grieve, which eventually leads to them absolutely destroying the house. And
they see right through Jennifer Lawrence.
Oh, yeah.
They don't care what they do with her belongings, because it doesn't matter, because as long as this man is happy, God, they can do no wrong. They think it's
okay.
They think it's fine. They start abusing everything she does, and then all of a sudden the sink was not braced, a water main breaks, and water shoots through, and everyone is kicked out of the house. The flood. At no point did I see a little tiny boat with animals on it, but I'll let that part slide. And they've started basically taking advantage and extorting everything that Mother Nature has to offer, all by the hospitality of God. And this comes back to bite them in the ass, as they are all kicked out into the literal rain. And the house is then left to Mother Nature and God once more. And she is so frustrated with him, and they decide, we're Randy. Let's get down and dirty.
Let's get down and dirty.
Let's get this baby in us.
Very good. And that is a huge point as well, because that's where you have a miraculous conception.
Now, why would you call it?
I don't know. I like to keep things nice and clear.
Keep the Christ in Christmas.
Yeah, sorry. But, yeah, definitely. But, like, that idea is we wake up the next day and finally, not only do we have the house finally to ourselves again, without all these pesky people, we now have our next great creation. And as soon as that literal seed was planted, you then have, as if another miracle happens, now Javier is able to write. He had his inspiration to write again.
He does start to, he gains that power back because he has peace of mind again, and he can write, which ultimately leads to more people coming and showing up.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Again.
And then, so yeah, going through that, we can.
So he writes this what we are never revealed what it is or what.
We know it is a poem.
Yeah, we know it's a poem.
Yes. Like that's because he is a poet. He writes poems.
Yeah.
And that's as close as you ever get to it.
So beautiful that it makes Jennifer Lawrence cry. But after reading it, she says, "But will you still notice me? Will you still love me?"
Yeah.
Because this is an open love letter, a poem to all of his creations, but she feels that she'll be seen as less important as these people realize how important they are to God.
Harkening back to the idea of, is she enough?
Is she enough? And the answer is, meh.
Very true.
6 out of 10.
6 out of 10. Jennifer Lawrence.
6 out of 10. No more X-Men.
No more X-Men. Like, and
Wow. Leave that part out, I think.
What do you mean? But okay, so we go through this, and you have what's very nice about this, and I can't remember the introduction now, is he has published his great work, his magnum opus.
Yes.
And immediately, almost miraculously, everyone has read it. We have someone spreading the word, and everyone hears the word and immediately comes to the Javier Bardem and Jennifer Lawrence's house.
And when we say everyone,
we mean
everyone.
And,
which was when the movie really takes off.
Yes.
Right when you think it couldn't get any worse,
Yeah.
it does. Tenfold.
Yeah, because it comes to the point where, because you have this great work that's been published, Jennifer Lawrence makes this amazing dinner. They're going to celebrate, have a nice one-on-one conversation about it, and it immediately is a time where
she's ready to give birth soon.
Yes.
That's approaching. We see it. She's getting ready.
Everything's absolutely perfect. Their connection is great. Right? They're both successful.
They're communicating equally.
The house
he's not so distant from her in that scene when they have the conversation before dinner.
Yep. And the house has been pretty much set up, ready for the baby to be born. And then they
waited for the right time.
Yeah. And then they get to the next knock on the door. But this time, they're very happy about the book, and they just wanted to find the author. They wanted to know, they wanted to see the face of the person that has created the most beautiful work. It spoke to every single of them individually. We got it. We felt your connection.
But did they all gain the same thing from it?
Interestingly enough.
And that's where things get wacky.
No, they gained pots and pans from the house. They
want something to prove that they were there. That they spoke to God, that they did this. They're stealing pans. They steal vases. They steal boards from the wall.
So these people are all outside, and eventually one mother and her child eventually make their way into the house because the son has to use the bathroom, or he soiled himself, or he has to clean up. And at this point, we see Jennifer Lawrence's character more humble, I think, than ever probably throughout the film, where she's like, "Oh, okay, let me help you out," but then you have to go again right away, which did not happen.
Jennifer Lawrence is being thrown to the side even more, not even respected as the owner of the house.
They've taken every resource they could possibly give. Nothing is out of the question. The dinner she's prepared, the home that she's worked so hard to make, they are literally tearing it board from board and taking everything that she once held dear and sacred.
And when we say gone, it was gone in under 10 minutes. From that last final crowd showing up, the house went to a complete disaster.
Yeah.
Eventually, riots broke out. There were I think I even recall there were army men in a couple shots. There were people.
There's artillery. There's people shooting each other. People caged.
The class system kind of broke out within the house where there were people abusing power that they have kind of stolen.
The thing they all share in common, right, or something, is they all have this picture of Javier Bardem. I have a connection to him, meaning what I say and do is right. And then this is where I think, but this is where the religious imagery becomes a lot more on the nose, because Javier Bardem starts marking people, saying, you've heard my words, please come into my house, which Jennifer Lawrence is like,
not happy about.
No.
She comes up, she says, they're taking all these things, and he says to her, but like it could all be replaced.
Yeah.
These are material objects, because to him, as long as it pleases those who he created, nothing else matters. Nothing is too much. It gets crazy. And there are a lot of people who then give up the violence just to see what comes next. What is the next creation? These are these gifts we can give to God. Mm-hmm. These are all of these things that we just want to please you. What should we do? The chosen people are waiting upstairs to hear what Javier Bardem has to say next.
The bottom level at this point you see is a literal war zone. There's even a section where you have a military person saving Jennifer Lawrence to get her up to the next level because she's, pregnant. You also have to remember she's 9 months pregnant at this point. Then you have Javier Bardem basically saying, it's good. Look, we have all our good people up here. Now we have Jennifer Lawrence going into full labor, and we need to get her back into the study. And that's where we see Jennifer Lawrence have the baby. It's the moment of
as soon as that first baby scream is heard, the whole silence really settles in. And this silence had lasted for days after she had the baby. Throughout this time, his chosen ones, among other people out there, are leaving gifts outside this study to be given to the mother and the child.
And then you see Jennifer Lawrence being extremely protective of her child. She will not let Javier Bardem have the baby. And they wait. And then finally, Jennifer Lawrence gets tired and she falls asleep. The next moment she wakes up, the baby's gone. And Javier Bardem is going out saying, this is my child, my next creation that I'm going to share with the world. My one and only child will be shared with the world.
I hope you don't mess it up.
He hands the baby off to the world, and the baby is essentially crowd surfing and getting tossed around, and Jennifer Lawrence is...
Babies are not built well.
No, babies are
fragile.
Babies are fragile things, and they are not treating the child in the necessary way. Then you have the baby being overshared with the world, which leads to the baby's death. And that is very much this idea. It's Jesus Christ being shared with the world until his death. And then the world goes quiet, and
baby
hear...
shared, baby dies, baby driver.
Baby driver.
Are you drawing the lines?
Does everyone have their red tape and red lines ready to go? Are you making the connections here?
I hope you're taking notes on your bias.
Yes. The idea here is, and this is where the imagery becomes very much on the nose.
Yeah.
Because the baby is...
then shared.
Yeah,
the body of Christ.
Yes.
Literally shared the body of Christ.
Yes. We have to go into it because a baby was torn apart and people were eating the baby. And it is a...
pretty new for film, huh?
Oh, yeah. Hashtag so brave.
I believe neither of you saw 2015's The Vitch.
I guess not.
Where a baby is immediately made into a paste. 2 minutes into the movie. Hashtag brave tweet.
The Vitch did it first. Babicide.
Get your heart out, Darren Aronofsky.
And again, we're probably treating this very unceremoniously, but it is so on the nose and so ridiculous. Once again, you get to the point where, okay, this is a Christ
and Jennifer
figure.
Lawrence is then pushing through the crowd, trying to get to whatever's left of her child. She starts killing.
That's especially where it becomes the idea that Mother Nature finally, after the entirety of the movie, can fight back, and she's able to. She's been patient, hasn't fought back, and now she is fighting back.
Not before she nearly gets curb stomped.
Oh, that's true.
She is, for trying to punish those who smite the baby, she starts stabbing them. At this point, they knock her to the ground, start ripping away at her clothes, are kicking her face.
Calling her names.
Literal abuse of Mother Nature. This is the point where most people in the audience were very unhappy. Yeah. All 8 of us for this blockbuster movie.
Oh, minus the one who got up and walked out.
Yes.
But
crowd pleaser.
finally, she has her redemption. She realizes that the only way I'm going to be able to fix this is if I burn everything to the ground.
Global warming, climate change.
So,
Gotcha!
Boom roasted, literally.
so she proceeds then to go downstairs and go through that hole that she originally uncovered in her basement, which was... It was beyond the furnace, which was where all the oil was kept.
Yeah.
Because it was an oil furnace,
Yep.
which she broke open.
She
She broke it open. Oil was spilling everywhere, and she held
had a lighter.
the lighter,
Yeah.
which was Adam's lighter.
Yes.
Yes.
The doctor's.
The doctor's lighter.
Yeah. And then she lights the house on fire, exterminates absolutely everybody, and you get I guess it's a little bit of the opposite of the opening scene, where you see Jennifer Lawrence is now definitely on fire, which harkens back to the first scene where we saw just a woman on fire, and then the cut to white.
And throughout this burning, though, like Javier Bardem, he's right there next to her.
Yeah.
That those flames go out, and they essentially purge the whole home,
Yes.
along with everyone in it. But he survives,
And is unscathed.
and he's unscathed.
Whereas Jennifer Lawrence, well, crispy.
a little bit.
It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground. Very tasteful.
Very good. You underestimate my power.
And in the midst of this, he carries her upstairs back out of the basement, I believe,
Yep.
up to the study once again. He then is asking her for more after she has given everything. He asks for her love.
And and what does her love become?
Well, that involves
It involves just a very quick, very tastefully done.
surgically very 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 neat and clean cut.
Rip open of the chest. A little
So-
Temple of Doom grabbing of the heart.
Talima.
Talema. And
so he takes
You know.
he takes her heart once again, or it crumbles into the stone, which we see once again is what we can guess is a new stone.
Yes,
I believe.
And that was the stone that was originally in the study, which caused him to close the study because it broke, and the cycle repeats. And really, the symbolism there is the woman in this house is the symbol of Mother Nature's spirit, whereas the house and the planet outside of it is obviously the physical manifestation of Earth. And so we just went through the entire movie and breaking it kind of apart, but there's, I guess, two big things that the message of the movie was supposed to be, right?
And you know what? I don't even think you got to be religious even to completely understand. You could still draw a lot of the major themes, which is like, don't be wasteful. Be thankful for what you've got. Don't take more than you need.
Yeah,
It's not just the story of the Bible; it's a story of Earth.
And now that I really think about this, and
But global warming's not real.
yeah, global.
Hold on, is the Earth flat?
Let's go back even.
flat. But and like that's one thing that I do find interesting though is the tagline of the movie being philosophical horror. The reason, and I have to say too, I think we all had this experience, but the uncomfortability of seeing that, of seeing people act like children, not listening to Jennifer Lawrence's character, like, hey, don't sit on the counter, don't break my stuff, don't go in that room, don't do this, hey, and really she's just trying to look out for us.
Incredibly unnatural as this unfolded.
Like, in the theater, I was unconscious of why I was feeling uncomfortable. I'm just like, that's not right. They should listen. And they didn't listen, and they brought about their downfall. And in a way, that's what being a child is, right? When you go from a child to an adult, it's when you realize, for the most part, the people that were telling you what to do and what not to do were trying to just look out for me. Or if you're able to come out of this movie understanding what it means, it is a coming-of-age story for humanity. And I think maybe that's why this movie has that potential for power.
Value. It's value in that sense. I mean, it makes...
They should have put it in far more of a palatable thing, though, is the issue. I feel like this movie has a lot to say. The other people in the theater, whether they got the message or not, walked out saying, well, no, not even the best actors could save that horrible movie.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get a message across and the only thing people are paying attention to is how their favorite actors weren't in the best movie, maybe it didn't come across. So,
and I think, too, I heard the people behind us say, I have no idea what that was trying to tell us. Maybe, again...
They're not God-fearing Christians.
I guess not, but, and again...
I've never been to church.
How would we, if you were to remarket this movie, and it's difficult to say this because there's no way to market a movie as a reflection of how really crappy humans are and how they're destroying the planet, but we're going to do it in this metaphorical sense of a house in the middle of a forest. You can't do that and bring in an audience.
No.
It seems like it should have been a 25-minute short art film, except he put his heart and spirit into getting this movie made, and I respect.
I respect.
I respect
Absolutely.
that his unaltered vision came through.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is, I don't think there is a way to make this movie palatable to an audience, or even properly get them prepared. The only thing I knew about it was, it might be about the Bible, it might be about global warming, who knows.
Yeah.
And I'd heard that it was incredibly divisive. I wanted to see it opening day because I'm curious about Aronofsky movies, and personally, if a movie gets this sort of response, that brings me to it even more.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're going into it thinking this is going to be this is going to blow my socks off with how crazy it chooses to go, I don't think you're going to be pleased. And if you go into it thinking it's going to be a straightforward movie with these characters, and it's a horror movie, you're not going to be pleased. The issue is finding the middle ground of someone who sees this as entertaining enough to sit through, while barraging someone with your message, bringing in the audience that would care enough about what you're trying to say to sit through all of the stuff that you're making us sit through.
Yeah.
This movie did enough of a job making it interesting where I think it was a good movie. There are a few people I would say, I recommend you see this, because I think it's too difficult, it's too long, and in the end, I feel like an explanation of this movie is almost better than seeing it.
Yeah, and that's...
Because it will never
so
live
right.
up to the thing that you've built in your head.
Well, first let's say, would you say you like this movie? Would you see it again? I'll go first. So, for the merit of this movie, going in with the expectation of this is, for some reason, a controversial film, didn't really know why, and I was like, okay, no expectations. Going into it, I felt lost and confused for probably the first half of it, because I didn't really understand what was going on. And then when I did understand what was going on, I was like, oh, this is actually somewhat powerful. You're not telling me anything I don't already know. I'm not coming to a greater revelation. You just made a you just made a metaphor for what I already know is going on in the world. Climate change and...
The film paints an old story in a new light, essentially. In a way, I think me as someone who's not very religious can grasp it, but I still need to know the backstory.
Yeah.
I can't go on without not knowing the backstory and still understand this film. Did I like it? I think it was good. I liked a lot of the shots and everything. The cinema was pretty decent. We did see the back of Jennifer Lawrence's head a lot throughout the film.
But I feel like that did a good job of making it very claustrophobic, even in such a large house, to the point where, even as the movie went on, I was like, I don't know how big this house is.
Yeah. Yep. So, I did like the movie. I won't see it again, but I might go on YouTube later and look up some explanation videos or see what other people are saying about it, but that's as far as I'm ever going to go.
It's enough to get you talking, which I feel, even if it's not the best thing in the world, the fact that it makes you attempt to try to get more out of it is something. I can't guarantee every person who goes in to see this movie is thinking to themselves, well, let me figure out more.
For sure.
And that's where I feel like this movie has too much of a barrier of entry for almost everyone. Mm-hmm. Where even if you go in with a note from Darren Aronofsky saying this is what this movie's about, you end up still getting things that you weren't expecting, things that you still have to parse through in your own head. I enjoyed it. It was enough where every single time something was shown, I was like, I need to figure out why this is. It's stimulating, whether it's just something subconsciously or just wanting to get to the next step. Mm-hmm. I personally will probably watch it again a few more times just to piece everything together and to pick up other things. I can think of no one I know that I would possibly recommend it to, and I'd end up watching this movie by myself.
I can definitely say it was a good movie. I don't think I liked it, though, but I respect it for being as thought-provoking as it was. It's tough.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's, and I'm just kind of thinking now, it's basically, I'm thinking how Leonardo DiCaprio, right, when he won his Oscar for The Revenant, he goes on stage being like, oh, this was a great, the movie, the reason it was great, because it was very artistic, and it was all about this idea of a man's struggle through nature. He gets on stage and talks about climate change as his big, thing, but it's the same thing for this movie, right? but then it just boils down to, oh, well, okay, I get the metaphor.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm walking away
I
from.
completely agree. That is exactly.
It's interesting to get a different view, and I will repeat again that I enjoyed seeing this person's view of how they would tell the story. But at the same time, was it necessary? No.
Mm-hmm.
Do I wish it was successful? Yes, because I hope that a success of this kind could bring people to make more interesting movies. I still
Absolutely.
see every single DC movie, I see every single Marvel movie, I'm there on the first day for Star Wars, but the movies that stick with me the longest are the ones that are different.
Yes.
The reason I'm still talking about The Lobster is because it's the weirdest movie I've ever seen in my life, and it had enough.
So
That's important though as a film, because not all movies you want to make you feel good kind of throughout them. Like I myself can say, like, throughout that movie I was like sitting in my seat and I was anxious. Like this movie was giving me anxiety for a while. But again, it was very thought provoking, and that was eye opening to me in a sense, giving me more time to think about the issues at hand.
I also think too, in terms of recommending this movie to people, I would be interested to see and talk to like people that are religious. That's like I would definitely recommend they see it if you're willing to open up your mind. You know,
But I feel like it's almost a bastardization of what they feel.
yes,
Which is another point of the movie, but I think it's one of those where even if you are religious, it might still go over your head. Because you have this vision of what it should be, and seeing this other person's, it's
That's
wrong.
true. It'd be interesting because I'm sure we're going to see much more backlash of religious people saying, "You painted my religion in a terrible light. How dare you do this?" Because because they don't.
But you got to look past that, because that's not the point that the filmmaker's trying to make. At least that I believe.
Yeah, but then again, that's will the common person think that? Will the person? I'm not saying they don't have a capacity for it, because I'm saying there are probably there
absolutely.
are religious people that are very open minded. They understand metaphor in film, but there's other people that are like, we don't actually eat babies, okay? Like, it's a little wafer cracker, and they taste like cardboard, but it's a symbol, Whereas in this film, it's like, hey, they eat babies, So it's just, there
is a suspension of disbelief, but I feel like there is a huge portion of the audience, based on the box office returns and people walking out of the movie we were in, that just aren't going to get that sort of thing out of it.
If we were to right now, and let's go through kind of, we were talking about a checklist of things, right? In terms of story, do you go to see this film for a good story?
Here's what we got to keep in mind here: the story has been already told.
Yes.
This is it's just painting in new light. It's a new It's a new story.
It's the Avatar, Pocahontas, Last of the Mohicans, or Dances with Wolves. I apologize.
So let's take this into account then. Knowing that this is a story retold, is this a good retelling of that story? That's the question I'm posing to, like, I personally, it was good, but you're not going to this movie to see the story of this movie. And you don't know it's a retelling when you're walking in that theater, necessarily. You're not going to see this movie for a story. So, personally, for me, not a story movie. You're not going to see the story, right?
Absolutely.
I'm there to see the interpretation of how this person takes this and chooses to show it to me.
Okay.
Which I still feels like falls into the narrative camp, but also falls heavily on the visuals.
So then, visuals. Then would you say if you want to see something cool, all right, or see something interesting, is this a movie you go to see something interesting?
It's
Visually.
Visually, it's something I haven't seen before. It's something where it's hyper reality. None of this could ever exist, but the way that they place it, it feels like it could exist in this world, and I feel like it all falls into place to a point where there was never a moment where I was like, why did that happen? Because I
agree. Yeah.
They set it up in a way where I would not be surprised if such and such happens. As a baby was killed, I was like, yep, this is the movie I'm watching. The good or bad thing, that's subjective, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think, and visually for me, I thought the way that you were constantly following Jennifer Lawrence's character with, I don't know what that, I liked that because it made me feel more sympathetic for the character. I thought the time passing shot of Javier Bardem literally just staring at Jennifer Lawrence with the child seeing like the nighttime and then the twilight blue and then the day.
Yes.
That was absolutely beautiful. It was like a screensaver, like a very twisted screensaver.
I would not want Javier Bardem looking at me through my...
No, because Javier Bardem doesn't just look at you, he looks at your soul.
I agree with you. I think it definitely had some very enticing shots that were beautiful. I mean, I think what I can say, though, too, the takeoff from when shit really hit the fan in this film, like when stuff really started popping off and we have cages in the house, we have army men running around shooting, people are getting shot, there's riots, people are clubbing each other. That was interesting. That compilation of shots was very, very well done.
So visually, we'll say we enjoyed like the visual aspect of this film very much. I'd say
little gruesome, I will say.
Oh yeah,
I think it could have told that story and not been as gruesome. I don't think they needed to. I guess I'm saying, like, I don't think they needed enough. They didn't have to show the death of the baby in the light that it did, even if it was brief. I think they could have maybe avoided that a little bit.
I feel like they really stuck to their guns, and they were like,
right.
This is the movie we're choosing to show you, so no holds barred, we're just going to show you this.
Yeah.
Yet again, good or bad thing, I don't know.
Me neither.
And now, what do we... So, in terms of acting, and I will say with acting, we have to think of it in this way. Knowing these actors, of who they are and the characters they typically represent, right? As specifically
Can't look at it like that.
I guess not. You're right, because
just,
actors are very versatile, and I'm not saying that they're not, but I'm saying... If you are
How did they fit into these characters?
Yes, exactly. How do they fit into the characters? And maybe as a caveat to that, like, and we've referenced this earlier, but the idea of, like, you're not going to see Jennifer Lawrence in X-Men or Hunger Games. This is something that is completely new for her. This is nothing you've probably ever seen from her. I mean, not in the same sense. I don't really know the best way to say that. But in terms of acting, did these actors who portrayed these characters do it well and convincingly, or you felt some kind of connection with the humanity that they were trying to express? And I know it's a very high concept, I guess, but...
To an extent, yes. I feel like Jennifer Lawrence, near the end, kind of lost it to... I get the point, she's upset, but it was more just her yelling and running around in circles. I feel like the rest of the movie is very compelling how they almost subdued her performance, where it's all just facial expressions.
Yes.
When she's upset, she's not always just crying. You can just see the way she angles her jaw, how her eyes are looking, that she's not making eye contact. All of this is very subtle. I feel like maybe that fits into the movie because it starts off more subtle and then turns into this bombastic thing. But I feel like near the end she sort of lost it. But Michelle Pfeiffer was extraordinarily convincing as this conniving, I know that what I'm doing makes sense, so I'm going to keep doing it. Basically, every other character fit into what they were supposed to be. Spoiler alert, Kristen Wiig was fine. I don't know why she's in the movie. She is, she's my favorite bridesmaid.
So brave.
Fifth favorite Ghostbuster.
Fifth favorite Ghostbuster.
So.
Wow. And yeah, she was a little bit of an inconsequential character, but I also think too, well, she really wasn't, but I would like to, that's one thing that I do think I'll investigate later, because I want to know who this person represented. That's the one metaphor or connection that I did not get.
What do we think of this as a present day 2017 film?
So we'll say this film, how it fits in the narrative of what it means to be a film in 2017.
Yeah.
So in terms of, I would say that idea, we already mentioned a little bit, of that bravery of being something different with large name actors, with a pretty big marketing, what I think is a pretty big marketing push, because I was very aware of this film's existence. With the force behind it and what it tried to do, being something unique, and I'm doing air quotes there, it was important because it shows that you at least get some interest, but not box office success interest, which is going to hurt.
But those don't always fall hand in hand. Shawshank Redemption was a box office flop.
Oh, okay.
One of the better movies from last year, The Nice Guys, which has done miraculously well in Blu-ray sales, was a flop. This movie particularly, I think when it falls into its own place cinematically, I feel like it does enough different where it deserves to be recognized for taking a chance. Did it do it to the best of its abilities? I don't think so. But I'm happy someone tried to do something different, and whether or not it paid off, I still think a landmark movie of this year, because of all the movies I'm gonna talk about, it's the ones that made me question.
I definitely think once this film has other films surrounding it that tell stories that have been told already in a different way. Not saying they got to be religious. You look at movies. I can say I personally enjoyed like the retelling of some of like the Romeo and Juliet type stuff. The one with Leonardo DiCaprio. I liked that. That present day. That was obviously these are completely different categories of movie, but
it's
a new telling of a story, and I think these types of movies can be done very well. You got to be careful though. Like we said, like you said before about someone who is Christian may see this and be like, oh, well, we don't eat babies. And it's like, it's okay for you to tell a movie. I'm not saying you shouldn't make the movie because you're going to get that type of reaction from that person.
Mm-hmm. And so I kind of want to go back to what you were saying, because the way you phrase the importance of this movie, do you think that this movie is going to get an Oscar nomination or anything like that going forward?
I feel like they're probably going to push for Jennifer Lawrence.
Okay.
Javier Bardem was good in it, but I feel like he's not, despite having won before, is not going to be the one that they're going to front run. Mm-hmm. I feel like as the series progresses, but there's also a lot of leading ladies currently thought about being placed in the Best Actress category. So I think it's one of those, we'll have to see how the competition stacks up. Mm-hmm. I can see Paramount pushing for Jennifer Lawrence.
Because we are with her throughout the entire film. Do we ever leave her? Do we ever leave her? I honestly don't remember.
There's one scene where they cut out and you see just the grain and you see like smoke rising up, and she's off in the distance. Mm-hmm. Aside from that,
you're stay with her
completely.
The whole movie.
She does a very good job of carrying it. The issue is if she carries a movie that most people would generally say is bad, that's a good actor in a bad movie, as opposed to a very, very good actor who made the movie. So, because I didn't walk away from this saying, wow, I'm amazed Jennifer Lawrence did a good job. I was like, wow, this movie exists. Jennifer Lawrence worked really well with the substance.
That's facts.
I do, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think you're
I
definitely
like
right
that.
there. So, right now, we'll say, you heard it here first. Potential maybe nomination of Jennifer Lawrence for Best Actress, possibly, maybe.
We'll see you February.
See you in February. Okay, so I think one of the things that we'll definitely do for ending off our wonderful podcast here is doing a little segment that we'll all come to know and love. 6 movies to sign, we'll call it. So we have a resident film aficionado, a connoisseur, a savant, some might say.
Idiot.
Who can connect any movie to signs. So, Nick, if you were to connect this movie within six connections to signs, so Mother to Signs, 6 connections, let's go.
Well, first we look at our leading lady, Jennifer Lawrence.
Yes.
She was in a 2011 film called X-Men First Class with James McAvoy, who was the leading man in M. Night Shyamalan movie Split. What else did M. Night Shyamalan direct, you may ask? The hit 2002 film Signs. Signs sealed delivered, it's Signs.
Hashtag Illuminati confirmed.
Wow, absolutely miraculous.
That was beautiful.
All right, so
remember, there is not a donation button, but I'll tell you my address in a personal email.
Yeah, if you can just take your money, put it on the keyboard, close your computer, and then it'll immediately come to us. We'd like to thank Nike and Adidas for sponsoring our podcast.
Movement watches, Indochino, Blue Apron.
Oh, yes.
Diabetic socks.
MeUndies.
Yeah, these are all products that we should see in more movies.
Oh, yeah.
Such as Mother.
I thought Javier Bardem would have looked very nice in a Movement watch. Have you seen those simple faces? Send us money. All right, thank you guys very much. In the future, I think we're gonna maybe try to do a couple of these more. We have a couple big movies coming up. I know that we might try to see Foreigner with Jackie Chan.
Yes,
the
Martin Campbell venture. Martin Campbell, director of GoldenEye, Casino Royale, and The Green Lantern.
Oh,
not every resume is perfect. We'll see how this one works.
All right, very good. Thank you all for listening. We'll definitely be back to do more. Have a good one.